If you look closely at the most formidable minds in history, you will notice a terrifying commonality. At some point, every single one of them walked away from the crowd. If your circle has quietly vanished, if the rooms you used to fill now feel hollow, if the superficial noise of modern society has become almost physically intolerable to you, then you are wrestling with something most people will spend their entire lives running from. You feel isolated, you feel misunderstood, you feel, at times, defective. But what if I told you that you are not broken? What if I told you that, according to Carl Jung, you have simply initiated a psychological process that 99% of people will never have the courage to attempt? You are shedding the collective mask. You are stepping into the architecture of the sovereign loner. And before this video is over, you will never again confuse your solitude with weakness. That single sentence dismantles the entire lie you have been carrying. You were told there was one correct way to exist, one acceptable level of socialization, one template for what a fulfilled human being is supposed to look like, sound like, and behave like. You were told that if you didn't fit inside that template, something inside you must be malfunctioning. So you tried. You forced yourself into rooms that drained you. You laughed at conversations that felt rehearsed. You attended events that left you emptier than the silence you came from. And after years of that performance, you arrived at the question that nobody around you seems brave enough to ask. If humans are biologically wired to be social creatures, why does participating in society leave you feeling so entirely empty? The answer is not what you were taught. The answer is what Carl Jung spent his entire career trying to articulate. You are not failing at connection. You are graduating from it. You are entering the early architecture of inner sovereignty, and the discomfort you feel is the discomfort of a mind too large for the container the world built for you. Most people will never feel this. Most people will live and die inside the collective hum, never once questioning the script handed to them. But you have already crossed a threshold. The fact that you are watching this, the fact that the noise has stopped working on you, means your psyche has begun a process that deep psychology calls individuation. It is the silent, surgical separation of who you actually are from who you were trained to be. And by the end of this, you will understand why that separation feels like loss, why it is actually the opening movement of self-mastery, and why the strongest, most strategically composed minds in human history were forged in the exact same silence you now sit inside. You will leave this video with the framework that turns your isolation from a wound into a weapon of quiet authority. You will recognize the hermit not as an outcast, but as an archetype. You will see your solitude not as exile, but as elevation. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a sovereign mind in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. There is a costume you have been wearing for most of your life. You did not choose it. It was sewn onto you in childhood by every adult who told you to be agreeable, every teacher who rewarded compliance, every social circle that punished the parts of you that were too sharp, too quiet, too perceptive. Carl Jung gave this costume a name. He called it the persona. The persona is the face you present to the collective so that the collective accepts you. It is the smile you produce in meetings, the laugh you manufacture at jokes you find tedious, the version of you that nods, agrees, defers, and minimizes itself to keep the social temperature comfortable for everyone else. And here is the part that nobody told you. For the average person, the persona is the entire personality. There is nothing underneath it. The mask and the face are the same. That is why those people can socialize endlessly without exhaustion. They are not performing. They have nothing underneath the performance to protect. But you are different. You have an interior, you have a watcher behind your eyes. And every time you put the mask on, you can feel the weight of pretending. You can feel the precise moment the smile becomes mechanical. You can feel the energy leaving your body like a slow leak. That exhaustion you feel after social events is not weakness. It is the cost of carrying two selves at once, the public one and the real one. And the real one is starving. This is the first revelation of shadow work. Your fatigue is not a character flaw. It is intelligence. It is your deeper self protesting the betrayal of being hidden. The more developed your inner world becomes, the heavier the collective mask grows. The more you grow, the less you fit. And what looks like social failure from the outside is actually the early symptom of psychological promotion from the inside. Now you must understand something uncomfortable about the species you belong to. Human beings are not primarily rational, they are tribal. For most of our evolutionary history, separation from the group meant death. So, a deep, ancient circuit was installed in every human brain, a circuit that punishes solitude with anxiety and rewards conformity with comfort. This is the herd reflex. It is the silent gravitational pull that keeps people inside the crowd even when the crowd is destroying them. It is why people stay in friendships that drain them, jobs that hollow them, conversations that bore them. The fear of being alone is older than language itself. But here is what deep psychology reveals. That circuit was built for a world that no longer exists. It was built for a tribe of 40 people fighting for survival on an open plain. It was not built for a world of 7 billion strangers, algorithmic noise, and shallow performance. In the modern environment, the herd reflex does not protect you, it exploits you. It keeps you connected to people who do not see you, conversations that do not nourish you, and identities that do not belong to you. Carl Jung observed that the mass dissolves the individual. Inside the crowd, you do not become more, you become less. Your edges blur, your voice softens, your instincts dim. The crowd does not elevate the individual, it averages him. And so the question becomes brutal. Are you lonely because something is wrong with you, or are you lonely because the herd reflex is firing inside a body whose mind has already outgrown the herd? Most people who feel this dissonance try to silence it. They double down on socialization. They fill the silence with noise. They mistake stimulation for connection. But you have started to suspect something different. You have started to suspect that the emptiness you feel inside the crowd is not a malfunction. It is a message. It is your psyche telling you that the next phase of your development cannot happen out there. It can only happen in here. This is where Carl Jung's work becomes a scalpel. He identified a process he called individuation, and it is the single most important psychological framework you will ever encounter for understanding what is happening to you right now. Individuation is the lifelong process by which a person separates from the collective psyche and becomes a distinct, integrated, sovereign self. It is the slow, deliberate construction of an inner identity that no longer requires the approval of the outer world to remain stable. Jung believed that this process was the entire purpose of the second half of a person's life. It is the reason you exist. And here is the part that will stop you cold. Individuation cannot begin while you are still fully immersed in the crowd. It requires withdrawal. It requires silence. It requires the very isolation you have been taught to fear. The herd cannot follow you into individuation, because individuation is precisely the dismantling of the herd inside your own mind. Every voice you absorbed without consent, every belief you adopted without examination, every fear you inherited without question. Individuation drags each of these into the light and asks a single surgical question: is this mine, or did I just agree to carry it? And whatever cannot survive, that question must be released. This is why your circle has thinned. This is why old friendships feel strange now. This is why the conversations that used to satisfy you now feel like static. You are not losing people. You are losing the parts of yourself that those people were attached to. The collective mask is cracking, and the people who only knew the mask cannot follow you past it. What feels like social loss is actually identity refinement. The pruning is not a tragedy. It is the process. Inner sovereignty is built precisely in this space, and the longer you sit inside it without panicking, the more clearly you will see what most people will never see: that the crowd was never the destination. The crowd was the starting line. Carl Jung mapped the human psyche through patterns he called archetypes. These are universal psychological structures that appear in every culture, every mythology, every story human beings have ever told themselves. And one of the most misunderstood, most quietly powerful archetypes in his entire framework is the hermit. The hermit is not the broken outcast that modern culture mocks. The hermit is the figure who withdraws from the village not because he was rejected by it, but because he has seen through it. He retreats to the mountain, the cave, the quiet room, not to escape life, but to access a deeper layer of it that the village is too loud to perceive. And when the hermit returns, he returns with something the village does not have: clarity, vision, perspective, authority that was not granted by the crowd, but earned in the silence. Every wisdom tradition on earth contains this figure: the desert mystic, the mountain sage, the philosopher in the tower, the strategist in the study. These were not socially defective people. These were people who understood something the masses never grasped. That depth requires distance. That insight requires interior space, that you cannot hear your own voice in a room full of borrowed voices. The hermit archetype is dormant inside you right now. Every time you crave silence, it stirs. Every time you decline an invitation that would have drained you, it grows stronger. Every time you sit alone with a book, a thought, an observation that the average person would never pause long enough to notice, you are activating the deepest archetype of mental strength available to the human psyche. And here is what shadow work demands you accept. You have been ashamed of this part of yourself for years. You have apologized for your solitude. You have explained your introversion as if it were a flaw to be excused. You have allowed the extroverted majority to define normalcy and then measured yourself against their definition and found yourself lacking. That ends now. The hermit is not the failure of socialization. The hermit is the architecture of self-mastery. And the moment you stop suppressing it, the moment you stop apologizing for it, the moment you embody it deliberately, you will feel something the crowd will never feel: the terrifying magnetic stillness of a person who is no longer asking the world for permission to exist. Now we arrive at the tactical layer, because solitude is not only a spiritual condition, it is a strategic position. When you step out of the constant noise of the crowd, something extraordinary happens to your perception. You begin to see what the participants cannot see. The person inside the conversation cannot analyze the conversation. The person inside the performance cannot study the performance. But the observer can. The one who stands slightly apart can read the entire room. The micro-expressions, the status games, the unspoken hierarchies, the motivations people themselves are not aware of. This is what deep psychology calls the observer's advantage, and it is one of the most underestimated forms of power in modern life. People who never spend time alone never develop this faculty. They are too busy reacting, performing, defending, and competing to ever pause long enough to perceive. But you have been training this faculty for years without realizing it. Every time you sat quietly at a table and watched the dynamics unfold around you, every time you noticed the small contradiction between what someone said and what their body communicated, every time you understood the real reason behind someone's behavior while they themselves remained confused by it, you were sharpening an instrument the crowd will never possess. Strategic perception, the ability to read situations with cold, accurate, unflattering clarity. And this is why your silence unsettles certain people. They sense that you are seeing more than you are saying. They sense that you are not playing the game they are playing. They mistake your composure for arrogance, your stillness for judgment, your independence for coldness. Let them. Their misreading of you is not your problem to solve. It is the natural friction that occurs when a high-perception mind moves through a low-perception environment. The sovereign mind does not explain itself to those who lack the framework to understand it. It simply continues. It observes. It calculates. It refines. And it grows quieter and more formidable with every passing year. The transition from isolated individual to sovereign mind is not a passive outcome of spending time alone. It is a deliberate, daily practice of aligning your actions, thoughts, and boundaries with the inner blueprint you have uncovered through individuation. This is where the philosophical becomes actionable, where self-mastery moves from concept to lived reality. The framework of sovereign integration involves three interdependent pillars: strategic boundary setting, deliberate energy allocation, and the expression of your integrated shadow in ways that command respect without demanding it. First, strategic boundary setting. Your time and your attention are the two most finite and valuable resources you possess. The sovereign mind treats them as a strategic reserve, deployed only where there is mutual psychological nourishment or a clear alignment with your own trajectory. This means learning to say no without explanation, to withdraw your presence without apology, and to terminate interactions that feel extractive. This is not rudeness, it is the precise application of self-respect. You will notice as you implement this that some people will react with confusion or even hostility. Their reaction is not a signal that you are wrong, it is a signal that you have ceased to be a predictable source of supply for their emotional or social needs. The disapproval of those who benefited from your lack of boundaries is the applause of your emerging sovereignty. Observe their reaction with the same clinical detachment you've cultivated. It is data, not a command to adjust yourself. Second, deliberate energy allocation. You have spent years draining your psychic battery on social performances that left you empty. The sovereign loner now inverts this equation. Your solitude becomes the non-negotiable center of your day, the sacred time during which you connect with your own depths, pursue the intellectual and creative projects that feed yourself, and simply exist without the pressure of performance. This is not about becoming a recluse. It is about becoming so inwardly rich that any external engagement is a choice, not a compulsion born of loneliness. When you do engage, you bring a full, vibrant presence because you are not secretly hoping to be filled up. You are already full. This is the essence of inner sovereignty. You are a source, not a receptacle. Third, the expression of your integrated shadow. The traits you once suppressed to appear nice, your critical thinking, your sharp tongue, your unwillingness to suffer fools, your capacity for strategic silence, are now reclaimed as tools of calibrated assertion. When a boundary is crossed, you no longer swallow your response to keep the peace. You state your reality with a cold, clear, and contained authority that leaves no room for negotiation. You do not attack. You simply stand immovable. This is the quiet dominance of the hermit who has become a sage. People sense that your center is not located in their approval, and that unshakability commands a deep, almost primal respect. You become the one who is consulted, not the one who is dismissed, the one whose words carry weight precisely because they are so few and so precisely chosen. This is the long-term vision of the sovereign life, a reality where your peace is impenetrable, your time is your own, and your presence is a privilege that others must earn through reciprocal respect. There will be resistance within you, a voice from your conditioning that calls this path cold or selfish. Recognize that voice as the vestige of the very programming you are transcending. The world has conditioned you to believe that self-protection is selfishness, because a self-protecting individual is a poor instrument for others' agendas. Your guilt is the leash that has kept you exploitable. Releasing that guilt is not a moral failing. It is the final, most critical act of psychological adulthood. When you fully inhabit your own life form, as Jung decreed you must, you become a gift to those few who can meet you at your level, and a mystery to those who cannot. And that is not a loss. It is a perfect filtration system. You arrived here feeling like a defective outsider, wrestling a profound sense of isolation that the world told you was a sickness. You now see that it was the initial tremor of an awakening. Your solitude was never a void. It was the arena of your individuation. The crowd's promise was counterfeit. The real kingdom has always been within. Carl Jung gave you the diagnosis and the permission. You are not broken. You are undergoing the rarest and most essential of human processes, becoming a sovereign mind. Your silence is not empty. It is full of a strategic intelligence that the socially frantic cannot comprehend. Your detachment is not loneliness. It is the ultimate form of self-protection in a world that commodifies attention. You are now among the rare 1% who have heard the call of the self and chosen the difficult, magnificent path of inner fortification. Step forward now with the quiet certainty of one who has reclaimed their own life form. The next time you choose a night of deep thought over shallow company, know that you are not missing out. You are building an empire that no external force can breach. The hermit is not hiding. The hermit is becoming untouchable. And from this day forward, when you stand in silence, you are not absent. You are surveying your kingdom. Now, before you leave, I need you to do something that seals this transformation into your daily consciousness. Type the word individuated in the comments below. Let it be a public marker of your initiation into the sovereign path. And if you are truly ready to abandon the exhaustion of the collective mask and integrate your shadow for inner command, you must subscribe now. This is the only space where we excavate the deep psychology of sovereignty, not just coping. Every new video is a further layer of your own untouchable architecture, and whatever you do, don't stop now. The on-screen video matters more than you think. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you there. See what others miss, know what others fear, become who others can't.